Hey Empoweristas, it's Alex Worley, and I am joined by stand-up comedian Heather McDonald. You probably saw her in Chelsea lately. Maybe you listened to her podcast, Juicy Scoop, and I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is beautiful.
Yeah, I know. So relaxing out here.
Yeah.
So this is Empowerista. We're all about female empowerment. So I got to state the obvious. You are in a very male-dominated industry. Do you feel the effects of that?
Well, I don't think there's never been a better time to be a female comic.
Okay, cool.
So I don't think we have as much to bitch about. I almost feel sad for the white male at this point. But I call my sons, I go, do you know that there is not any time in history where it's worse to be a white male than it is right now?
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I
love this.
I mean that they've had unfair advantages a lot.
Right.
And they still do, but at least the playing field is evening a little bit. I see it. It's interesting when you're raising sons, like what I see. My son is 13 and he's taller than I am, and he's really just like a kind of a confident kid. Nothing really bothers him, in sports. If he does well, he's happy. If he does poorly, he's like whatever. He's a good disposition. But one time I was nervous about a business thing, and he goes, "Oh my God, Mom, are you still afraid to email this person?" And I was like, wow, I wish I could be more like a 13-year-old white male who does not give a crap.
So you think that is a little bit of a gender thing, that boys are just brought up to feel a little bit more confident?
Well, a perfect example was we were watching the whole thing, like the 2020 or whatever it was, with all the Bill Cosby victims. Mm-hmm. And my husband was watching it, and he's like, I just don't understand why these women didn't go right to the LAPD and say this is what happened to me. And I said, well, for one thing, you're a 6'3" white male.
Yeah.
And even with my own son, I said, once you get past a certain age, you're kind of outgrowing the throw you in a van and kidnap you. But a woman, because of our physical size and who we are, we're going to always be a potential victim,
right? Per
se. And I said, and so of course, to you, as a white man who's 6'3", is like, someone does this to you and you're not going to, I said, but because of who he was and the time, and put on top of Hollywood, and agents and managers were saying, keep your mouth shut, you'll never work in this town, and it was 25 years ago, and you were drugged and don't remember. Like, of course, but then the fact that they all come together is what is empowering, Right. And that is what, sadly, validates a woman's claim. She shouldn't have to have 40 other women that it happened to, but you can't deny that. And recently on my podcast, I had a friend who was dating this guy and seemed like a cute divorced dad. And then she revealed that he asked to borrow money, which she lent him. He said, can you please float me this money for 4 days? Months later, we find out that he was dating 3 other women at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
They all find each other. They all came on the podcast. There are so many interesting things that all add up to the lies that he told all these women, many involving loans, but besides saying that we're exclusive and not being, that's one. Wow. But then being really shady about money and borrowing money and all that. And so I'm like, they were iffy about coming on the podcast. And I said, by coming on the podcast, I know it's embarrassing and it's humiliating, but you shouldn't be. You were taken by a master manipulator. And the fact that there's 3 other intelligent, pretty women that had the same thing happen should make you not feel that way. He's the bad guy.
Yeah, it's empowering.
And I think he was able to get away with it for so long because women are embarrassed, because you don't expect it to happen to you. Like a guy, from the beginning of time, there's been a man with a young girl who he probably knows she's with him because he's paying her rent and whatever, who cares? But when it happens the other way around and it's so surprising, where you think you're dating this guy who has his act together and you're just like completely taken. And so when I did the podcast, I said, my dream is that somebody listens to this and prevents them from being with him, And sure enough, I got an email from a girl in Seattle that, when I woke up to this email, I was like, this is kind of amazing. I felt badly for her, but she heard the podcast.
So you used his name and everything?
No, we did not use his name because I was like, legally, no, all I said was he's a divorced dad who paddleboards. He is.
And girl in Seattle was like, boom, I know who that is.
Well, what's so interesting is that he sent her the podcast. And he's like, these women are lying about me. I'm like, what a narcissist are you? And
Wow.
so she wrote me and she's like, he borrowed $3,300 from me, and I really thought I had a future with this person. So we talked on the phone for like an hour. She told me all the lies that he said, which I'm like, that's not true because I've talked to all these women.
Yeah.
It wasn't a loan, it was this, it was that. So, but then she wrote me, she's like, thank you so much for doing the podcast. Please thank the women for sharing their story. She's not going to see him anymore. She's probably out the money. But I'm like, at least you're out the money. You didn't marry him, you didn't have his baby, you didn't have him move in with you, he didn't take you for 50 grand. Like, you know, just move on.
Yeah.
And thank God that I did the podcast and this person posted it on a Facebook and he saw it and he somehow in his egotistical
helping
mind.
the world.
Well,
Look
I
at you.
thought now, talk about Christian service.
Right?
But it was just, I thought what was really cool is that the women all came together. I'm almost thinking like, if they were maybe all in their 20s, there could have been a little bit more of like, you just want my man, or, you know, these women had been the gamut. They married, divorced, broken engagements. They were like, oh God. But they all like loved each other. He picked great women.
And you talk about a lot of pop culture stories, right?
Yes, I love the pop culture stories. And and with everything in the world that is so awful, let us have this escape, you know? I mean, when some people say like, why are you even focusing on that when they're... Exactly, I'm focusing on it because what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Watch this horrible world events 24/7? Let me pick up Us Weekly.
Yeah, and laughter is the best medicine,
Yeah, let me
right?
find out what's going on with Kim, Kanye, and Taylor Swift.
What do you think about the Kardashians? They're very polarizing. Some people either love them or they hate them. I mean, there's like no in between, I feel.
I mean, yes, they're everywhere. They're not going anywhere. They're super successful. They've taken every opportunity and made it their own. And in doing that, they've made a lot of opportunity for a lot of other people. I mean, they were the first people to really make like Instagram and Twitter and all that profitable for other people. So I don't see how anyone can hate on it.
I actually like them. That's my guilty pleasure.
Well,
Keeping up
it's
with the
like what's
Kardashians.
cool. Well, the reason they last is because they're family and they really do stick together. So along with all the juicy stuff that happens within their family, they say what they feel, but they never really are estranged or anything.
My take on female empowerment is a woman should be whoever they want to be. And I think a lot of people look at the Kardashians and they go, you shouldn't want to be like that. It's like, let them do them. When Kim posted that one photo of herself basically naked, do you remember that? Yeah. Everyone was hating on her so much.
I have a question about that. So did she really post a completely naked with nips and all? Or was
there's
the black...
a little bar.
The bar was there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a bar there, and I had the same reaction. I'm like, come on. Like, you see magazine covers where they're, they're naked, but then they're covering themselves up. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm like, you do you. If that's what makes you feel good, then go for it.
If she covered the nipples, then I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't believe in like the free the nipple thing on Instagram. Instagram is a private company, and Twitter, and kids are on it. And I don't think that that's where you should be showing your naked breast. I just don't. You know what I mean? You have
That's
a million
what
other
Snapchat's
sites.
for.
You have a million other sites to do that.
Right.
You know. And for my generation, the worst thing you could be is conceited. Now everybody's conceited, so it's fine. So we all can be conceited, but we can be conceited and honest.
Yeah.
Love me, because I'm loving myself.
I love that.
And,
love me because I'm loving myself. Quote
Yeah.
today. Is that what your posts are like?
Yeah, one time I did. I was like in a bathing suit alone, and I'm like, I'm gonna post a picture of myself because I haven't had breakfast and my stomach is flat, and I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm just lonely and would like some compliments.
Like that was your caption?
Yes, that's what I said.
I love it.
Because it's like, don't lie about it.
So in your stand-up, you talk about your husband and your kids a lot. You get lots of inspiration every day, I'm sure.
Every day.
Are you just like constantly taking notes?
Yeah, all the time. And even stuff that happens that I think is bad, like I'll be crying. Like I just had this story about how I was so upset at this 4th of July party because we stayed with these other families, and it was so obvious that my family was the worst of the three. My kids were the worst, my husband was the least helpful, and we probably had the weakest marriage. And it was just very obvious. And they were kind of being snarky about my husband's naps and stuff. And so I kind of like lost it after a day of drinking. I also had my period.
Not a good combination.
Not a good. And I really didn't think I would find the humor. I never think I'm going to find the humor in it, but every time I'm able to, and I told I told the whole story in the podcast. I had my other friends listen, because I'm like, there's nothing, I'm not talking behind your back, I'm telling the story, you know? And that's what's kind of like great, you know, sometimes when I think something is bad, that I can always make a funny out of it. And then if I can get like a solid bit of material in my podcast or in my stand-up, well then I'm so glad the argument happened, you know?
So what was the funny that you found in this situation?
Just that every family's kind of different. And I was up against these two sisters that came from this big Catholic family, and they just are like cleaners. Like, invite them to your dinner party, they clean everything. And we're like not like that. And so I just couldn't compete. And then they trained their husbands to be like that.
Oh.
I mean, one friend was like making linguine clams at 8. Like, I've been friends with them my whole life. They had a ton of chores. They were raising younger siblings. They're just like these amazing women. And it's just like, oh God, I just can't compete with this,
That's
you
so
know?
funny.
And they're the nicest people. There's nothing they did wrong. Like, when they come to my house, there's not a fork left. But at the same time, like, I can't force my husband to be like that.
Is your husband helpful in other aspects?
Oh yeah,
like,
he is.
Like,
but it just was
good.
It was just
partner
like
and-
it was just heightened by seeing these other
totally.
men
There's-
like cleaning the egg pan for hours.
There's no one
It was
size
not a
fits
good
all,
pan,
right?
by the way. It was like a very not a good nonstick.
Okay, so where can we find you or hear you coming up here?
So everything, you can go to heathermcdonald.net for all my dates. My podcast is free, and you can get it on iTunes. It's called Juicy Scoop with Heather McDonald. Anywhere you can listen to, a podcast, and subscribe to it, and then come see me live. All my dates, come see my live shows. I have lots of dates all over the country.
Okay, and lastly, we ask this question to all of our Empoweristas. What
Yes.
is your definition of empowerment?
I think being your own best friend.
Are you your own best friend?
I think I'm a pretty good friend to myself. And I think sometimes that's
awesome.
what I tell people, like, when they're in situations, I say, well, if you were really being a best friend to yourself, wouldn't you tell yourself to leave this man, or stick up for yourself or whatever? So kind of being like, to put yourself first in that respect, in treating yourself like your very best friend, that you would never diss or put yourself in an unsafe situation, follow your instinct, that kind of thing.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And let us know what your definition of empowerment is using #Empowerista, and we'll show you some social media love.